The world you know is slipping away. This was the unspoken fear tormenting Americans in the years following World War II, the world changing around them. As nuclear warfare progressed, civil rights movements shook the foundations of society, and communism spread, many citizens wondered if the world was on the road to progress or destruction. The fear of change manifested in several prominent forms during the 50s and 60s, settling deeply into the American subconscious to drive irrational reactions and dangerous responses in policy and national outlook as a result of technological advancements, changes in social and cultural norms, and alterations of societal structure. This natural state of hysteria that propagated through the 20th century played a large role in shaping the official and domestic state of the American society and continues to grow, adapt, and infect the population today. Following World War II and the dropping of the first atomic bombs in 1945, the U.S. became consumed by fears of the fundamental structure of society being changed around them or eradicated outright by the increasingly rapid growth in military technology that resulted from the competitive arms race with the Soviet Union during the Cold War. Fear of technological change has always been a central fear in the American psyche. In its most basic form, technology and its advancement represents an unknown and dangerous power with a capacity for substantial global change, whether it be for better or worse. This fear of unpredictable change, of the world slipping away down a dark path of no return. No time exemplifies this active state of technophobia as a perpetual fear of weaponized technology during the Cold War. Following the conclusion of the Second World War, every new advancement in technology was perceived as simply a new, clever doomsday weapon or mystifying unknown with equally as dangerous potential. Even the advent of the first public computers in 1946 adopted a position in the public conscious as a new, unknown, and largely incomprehensible technological marvel that would have dangerous consequences. This seemingly irrational fear was not without reason, however, as just a few years earlier, the greatest displays of militarized advanced technology destroyed two Japanese cities, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Media at the time reflected this constant fear of total destruction with short stories like There Will Come Soft Rains by Ray Bradbury, published in 1950, depicting a lone, fully automated house following a nuclear disaster in California that would ultimately be destroyed as a last monument to humanity. Other equally distinguished media circling these fears, including Alas, Babylon by Pat Frank, the first production of Godzilla, and even publicly sponsored duck and cover ads and drills to simulate what should be done in case of an atomic attack, represented the widespread global concern faced during this time. While the fear of an all-out nuclear warfare has, for the most part, left the immediate state of global concerns, technology as a motivator of change in society continues to spark fear and unrest in modern-day society. Technologies like automation, artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, modification replace the fears of ballistic missiles and early computers with an equal stigma. Artificial intelligence, which has been at the forefront of debate, truly encapsulates the generalized fear of change and destruction at the hands of technology with the belief that humanity is at the mercy of machines, losing privacy and autonomy. The growth in technology, whether intended for positive change or weaponization, represented a standard of the larger fear of change, driven by the uncertainty of the world during the Cold War, an issue that continues to propagate decades later.
Across America, citizens became increasingly concerned about drastic social changes. World War II and its aftermath began reshaping American society. Veterans returned home, women fought to remain in the workforce, and racial minorities demanded equal rights as compensation for their war efforts. The growing women's rights movement and the abolitionist movement created numerous social fears. People who valued the traditional family structure, where the women stay at home and care for men, argued that a woman who sought equality with men lacked femininity and would be unable to find happiness as a wife or mother. However, Eleanor Roosevelt and other feminist activists asserted that nothing could be further from the truth, insisting that women were just as capable of traditionally masculine roles in the workforce and the social scene. In the abolitionist movement, complete racial integration and equality became a pressing issue for segregationists fearing the disruption of social norms. In Brown v. Board of Education Supreme Court case, abolitionists reiterated that in the field of public education, the doctrine of separate but equal has no place, and gained public and legal support when the Supreme Court ruled that separate educational facilities are inherently unequal. Scared of the consequences that desegregation would have on the productivity and well-being of American society, anti-abolitionists formed and revived groups such as the Ku Klux Klan to preserve white supremacy. The war also led to an economic boom which provoked the spread of consumer culture. The growing demands for shopping molded the urbanization of American cities and towns, and the previously unaffordable advanced technology became a basic household necessity. For instance, television became a staple of the modern family home, allowing middle-class American citizens to become more aware of political, cultural, and social issues and accelerate social change. The same phenomenon occurs today in the context of social media, where communities interact and learn a variety of perspectives, viewpoints, and diversity in opinions, bringing to the fore various voices that may have been previously less exposed in the public arena, and ultimately producing a more in-depth and nuanced image of public opinion. Social media encourages understanding and debate, allowing viewers to participate in the same news that would have otherwise been only visible on a screen decades before. Social media assumes a far more complex role in shaping public opinion and provoking social change, and has thus become a major source of change and a major source of fear in American society. The Cold War and the development of strong anti-communism sentiments precipitated a national desire for conformity to avoid communist accusations. Not only did Americans fear being unjustly labeled non-American, but they worried that individuality would be lost as more and more citizens began conforming to a standardized lifestyle popularized by television and media. Still, communism sparked more than just fears of social change. Communism made Americans fear for the very integrity of our democracy. After World War II and during Reconstruction, the Soviet Union began to spread communism to other countries. Seeing this, America feared that it would spread to the U.S., especially with how fast it spread through Europe following World War II. America has always had a deep fear of other types of government, communism in particular, dreading the influence they could gain and how they could change America. Coupled with the start of the Cold War, a rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union in the form of politics, economics, and propaganda, Americans were plunged into a fear that changes to governments around the world would lead to their own government changing. With the Cold War began the Second Red Scare, with Americans fearing that the country had communist spies feeding the Soviets all of America's secrets. Things escalated further when Joseph McCarthy, a U.S. senator, began asserting that communists had infiltrated the highest ranks of the government and claiming in a speech that he had a list of employees of the U.S. Department of State who were loyal to the Soviet Union. At that point, America already had a distrust of communism, and so when McCarthy claimed to have a list of Soviet spies, the distrust turned into a bone-deep fear. The list itself was fake, but the idea that communist spies could be a part of the government led to a period of paranoia and fear. To stop what people thought was a communist takeover, the government passed Executive Order 9835, a loyalty program that was established for federal employees, and began accusing anybody thought to have connections to communism. People began to fear being accused and losing livelihoods, and because of this could not speak up against the injustices. As with what happened in the film The Crucible, a movie covering the Salem witch trials and how and why they took place, people were afraid of speaking up and would instead accuse others. Those who spoke out against the injustices, such as speaking against the accusation of witchcraft or standing up against the accusations of communism, were seen as supporters. People were so afraid of their worlds changing that those who did not stand with the accusers were immediately seen as supporters and were outcasts. This fear of change was so strong that led to an unstable and paranoid government and people. This would not be the last time that America would fear change through communism, as there is a similar fear today. As with most things in history, this fear is once again repeating. America is experiencing a fear of change in the world structure and government. In recent times, the Red Scare has resurfaced in the United States, this time targeting China. Once again, the people of America are experiencing a fear of change through governments as spies, moving on from fearing the Soviet Union to fearing China. People are scared of Chinese spyware and the idea that China will take over the world with its ideals, mirroring the fears that people had during the Cold War. Change has always been a constant fear daunting the periphery of concern. It is a fear that has driven and shaped the structure of American beliefs, practices, and identity, especially during the uncertain and tumultuous period of the Cold War. Total nuclear annihilation threatened citizen safety, accelerating social changes challenged traditional American culture, and communist ideologies portended the collapse of democracy. Uncertainty fueled the hysteria and delirium during this time and continues to do so as the same fears that plagued Americans 75 years ago remain prevalent today. The collective American mind must learn to be open to the prospect of change if it is to transcend the primitive concerns that restrict it. Change is a constant that cannot be prevented by any measure of human interference and must instead be embraced to prevent constantly falling back into the same cycle of self-destructive accusation, conflict, and irrationality of its past.